Well, FEMA is something we can talk about later, but right now they're busy working, so we'll leave it at that. Go ahead.
Are you investigating whether some of the cuts to the federal government left key vacancies at the National Weather Service or in the emergency coordination?
No,
They did not.
They did. I'll tell you, if you look at that, what a situation that all is, and that was really the Biden setup. That was not our setup.
Compounding the issue, what looked like a shrug from Donald Trump when he was confronted with questions about the possibility that the federal government fell short in warning Texas residents. The New York Times reports this, quote, crucial positions at the local offices of the National Weather Service were unfilled as severe rainfall inundated parts of central Texas on Friday morning, prompting some experts to question whether staffing shortages made it harder for the forecasting agency to coordinate with local emergency managers as floodwaters rose.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. I am so tired of being told not to politicize tragedies like the one still unfolding in Texas. While thoughts and prayers are offered by Republicans, the Democratic Party has been sounding the alarm for years about what happens when you ignore science and when you gut the government agencies charged with keeping Americans safe. This is political. And I hope, as someone with roots in the Texas Hill Country, where my mom still lives, that enough Texans will rise up and demand better leadership. It's not as if they're lacking in real leaders to choose from. They just have to get past the charlatans like Ted Cruz and John Cornyn. One of those real leaders is Terry Virts, a former Air Force F-16 pilot and an astronaut who commanded the International Space Station and who is now running for the U.S. Senate in Texas. I spoke to Terry about the utter failure of leadership in both Texas and at the national level to perform the basic functions of government. Here's our conversation. Apologies in advance for Terry's video quality. Trust me, it doesn't affect the substance of our conversation. And if you sign up for my Substack page, every dollar raised in July and August will go directly to flood relief in Texas. Thanks. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. My guest today is Terry Virts. He's a former astronaut, commanded the International Space Station, and he's a retired U.S. Air Force colonel. Terry, what have you been doing with your life?
Living the dream, Ken. Living the dream. It's been pretty awesome. I was one of those lucky kids. I got to do what I dreamt about when I was a boy. I had posters. I had an F-16 poster on my wall. I had a space shuttle, the all-white original Space Shuttle Columbia poster, and I was a lucky kid. I got to do what I dreamt about. Awesome.
Well, I wish we could just reminisce and share flying stories and talk with our hands, but stuff is falling apart in Texas. And yeah. I know why you're running. It's because the system is breaking down all around us. We have a federal government that is not just ineffective, it is actually working against regular Americans. And I think you see that come to a head in moments of crisis that, leadership conveniently blames on acts of God or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you've got 27 kids missing from a camp, when you've got 100 dead along the Guadalupe River, and it's personal for me. My parents live in the Hill Country. I learned to hunt along the Guadalupe River, and as the president of Team Rubicon, I responded to floods in Texas. I know how dangerous that can get and how rugged individualism doesn't save you, right, from rising floodwaters. You need the government. You need that kind of warning system. You need the things that government exists to do. Give me your perspective as a Texan on the aftermath of this horrific disaster. And then let's get into the accountability piece, because I am damn sick and tired of people saying, don't make this political. Politics is what led in many ways to this disaster. Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I share your outrage, Ken. Look, I love that part of Texas. As we know, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. My son, we went hunting for the first time there in that very same region. It's not an unknown thing. This is the Republicans are wringing their hands like, who could have known this was going to happen? Single party rule here in Texas for over 30 years has been really bad. I mean, it's even been deadly. This county, Kirk County, had an option to build a warning system with sirens, and they actively chose not to. The neighboring county, Comal County, did that. They spent $300,000 on warning sirens. Would that have saved everybody? I don't know. This was a terrible flood. It was 4 a.m. It was the worst case scenario. But like to your point, government that works can actually help mitigate disasters, and government that doesn't work, which is what we have now, unfortunately in Texas, helps to add and increase the disaster.
Speaking of government and government officials that literally don't work, Ted Cruz was vacationing yet again during this disaster. He was filmed touring the Acropolis in Athens 24 hours after the flood as they were still searching for survivors. His team says he rushed back as soon as possible. It turns out he didn't. He came back on his regularly scheduled flight. I get angry just thinking about that man being sent back to the Senate again and again and again. How do you convince Texans that they deserve better leadership?
I think this flood is going to hopefully wake some folks up. I mean, there's a certain segment, the hardest core MAGA folks are never going to they're never going to come around. But there's a lot of Texans, if you want to call it in the middle, who were reluctant Trump voters. They didn't really, they kind of held their nose and voted. We need to get those guys on our side. I know for a fact we can win here in Texas, and we need to. If we don't, the consequences are really bad. Ted Cruz, one of the worst men in the United States Senate. Last week on the July 4th, Trump was signing this big bill that was just awful. Ted Cruz was adding in, he had special little amendments that he inserted to do even more cuts to NOAA, which, by the way, have 40% cuts. There's supposed to be a person who lets the local officials know what's going on. That person took the early out that DOJ had. So literally the person that was supposed to tell the local officials was gone because of the Trump administration's cuts.
Well, we don't have to speculate about the deadly impacts of these cuts. The former NOAA administrator, Richard Spinrad, said, "I am convinced that the staff cuts that we saw were a contributing factor to the inability of the emergency managers to respond." There's no one more qualified than the former administrator of NOAA to communicate the seriousness of these cuts and their deadly consequences. And add to that, this you referenced it, but The Guardian broke the story about Ted Cruz eliminating, in his last minute addition to the big ugly bill, eliminating $150 million that was to fund accelerated advances and improvements in research, observation systems, modeling, forecasting. Ted Cruz got rid of that in the bill. Now that's going to have longer downstream effects, but it illuminates a mindset that is about slashing no matter the consequences. And disasters like this are the inevitable consequence.
Look, Ken, life is hard. And in America, where we have science and technology, we're able to mitigate a lot of the problems that humans have had ever since the beginning of time, right? Weather forecasting is one of those. And I don't know why this administration, Republicans hate science. They're cutting science across universities. They're cutting science at NASA. I live here in Houston. NASA is getting gutted. They've cut 50% of our space research, human research, medical research, like tens of billions, maybe hundreds of billions of research. It's crazy that they hate science. They hate education. And these are the things that really do make America great. These are the reasons why all of these scientists from India and Europe and China, they want to come to America, because we have a great science community. And that science has given us the most powerful economy on earth. And this administration is cutting it.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you to everyone who's been following and supporting this show and this channel. None of it happens without you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my Substack page, I'd really appreciate the follow. It's a great way to make sure you never miss an episode. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks, every dollar goes back into the show. Just search for The Ken Harbaugh Show on Substack or click the link below. Thanks. I'm going to force you to philosophize for just a second. You said you don't know why Republicans hate science. I think you do. I think we all do. Facts are inconvenient. Facts are inconvenient when they come up against an ideology where fidelity to the alpha, to the man in the White House, is more important than any fact set that might challenge it. How do you parse that?
One of the big things we face, Ken, this is probably, let's do this on another podcast, the information ecosystem that we're in. Unfortunately, not everybody listens to the Ken Harbaugh podcast. If they did, they'd be a lot better off. If you're stuck in that information ecosystem, you never hear the facts of science. You never hear the facts of climate. All you hear is that climate science is left-wing, communist, Marxist propaganda. It's always Marxist, communist propaganda. They have no idea what Marxism is and communism is. And if you're stuck in that ecosystem, things are really bad. That's a tough problem to solve. We have to figure out how to fix that, but they just never hear the truth.
That's the other piece of it, the hypocrisy of those who know better. Yeah. And you can see right through it. The Cornyn's and the Paxtons and the Cruzes of the world, all incredibly highly educated, all want to keep getting invited to, not the Met, but the Kennedy Center, right? And they're feeding their followers just this ration of BS because it generates the clicks and it keeps the outrage up. And it's that hypocrisy more than anything that outrages me. I can understand if you're in an information desert somewhere in Texas because it's been designed that way. If you think that, the immigrants are coming to take everything when in fact they are more law-abiding than the vast majority of Americans. Yeah. If you live in that information environment, I have some sympathy for where your ideology winds up, but the leaders who create that, it's time for accountability for that.
They know what they're doing. John Cornyn knows what he's doing is wrong, and he still does it anyway, and that's the worst of the worst. And that's why I'm running for Senate. Go to terryvirts.com if you want to support this. I think we need, in Texas, it's been tough. Like I said, it's the standard Democratic politician has not been able to win here, which is why I'm running as a common sense kind of different. I'm not a politician as a background. I'm a fighter pilot and astronaut. So we need to win here. If we can win in Texas, we can get to 51. Here's another thing, Ken. Democrats are mad and we're frustrated, and we can give speeches on the floor and we can hold rallies, and that stuff's important. I was at the No Kings rally a few weeks ago. But until we get to 51 senators, it doesn't matter. Pete Hegseth is still Secretary of Defense. The big, beautiful bill still passes. Tulsi Gabbard is still destroying the national intelligence infrastructure. So until we have to win. The outrage and the anger that we feel is justified and real, and I feel it, but we have to win. We have to be smart. We have to debrief what went wrong in 2024, and we need to get better as a party in 2026 and win. And in Texas, in order to do that, we're going to have it can't just be, if we get all the Democrats to vote for the senator, we're going to get 40%, and we can be proud of ourselves. Like, if we're going to get to 51%, we have to get the reluctant Trump voters and those kind of middle of the road guys. They help, they couldn't handle it. That's another podcast. We have a lot of podcasts we need to do, but we got to get those folks to get to 51% here in Texas. And if we do, then I think we'll get to 51 votes in the U.S. Senate.
Well, I think there are a lot more of those folks than people think. There Certainly a lot more now that, a natural disaster is staring you in the face. They're going to run out of excuses eventually saying this is Joe Biden's fault somehow. And I sure hope Texans are as mad as I am about what is happening. Terry, we're going to leave it there, but we're going to actually end with your campaign video, one of my favorites. Thanks for joining us. Let's check in again soon.
Thanks for having me on, Ken. From orbit, Earth takes your breath away. It felt like seeing creation from God's point of view, something no human was meant to see. But amidst that beauty, danger is never far. You learn fast that chaos is lethal, so you adapt, you solve problems, and you lead because your lives depend on it. Down here, Trump's chaos must be stopped. The corruption is overwhelming. Our Constitution is under attack, and MAGA wants corrupt Ken Paxton in the Senate,
abusing the power of his office.
This crisis is real, but leadership is MIA.
We will win.
Attacking emergencies to solve problems, that's what I do. I was raised in a family with more union cards than college degrees. At 17, I joined the Air Force and eventually became an F-16 pilot. I flew 45 combat missions over Iraq, tested the world's fastest jets, and commanded the International Space Station. I've always lived by the Air Force's core value, service before self. After every mission, we debrief. No excuses, just the truth. After the 2024 election disaster, Washington Democratic leadership skipped the debrief. While chaos spreads, they cling to the same old bankrupt ideas, that they, and not voters, should pick our candidates, and that we should run the same old tired playbook again, hoping for a different outcome. This moment demands something different. Honesty, courage, and a clean break from the past. I'll make it my mission to fight for Texans every day. Texas farmers crushed by Trump's insane tariffs. Texas workers buried with rising costs. Texas kids hit with education cuts. And Texas communities kicked off Medicaid. I've risked my life for this country, and I'll fight anyone trying to destroy it. I'm an American first, a Texan second, and a common sense Democrat third. It's time for new leadership. I'm Terry Virts, I'm running for U.S. Senate, and I'm ready for my next mission.